Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this video I'm going to take a deep dive into damage, into DPS in Warcraft Rumble, and I think you might be surprised by some of the minis that are actually at the very top of the pecking order when it comes to damage dealing. Determining what mini deals actually the most damage is not that straightforward always, because there's mechanics that ramp up, like Fury and Poison, and then there's mitigation, like Armor, and there's Resist. So which mini deals the most damage in which situation and in how long of a fight, that's going to be a little bit different. But let's examine a few scenarios and look at generally the top DPS minis in this game. First of all, we can take a look at just the baseline damage, no talents, just the damage that minis deal from the very first second when they start to connect with the opponent. How much damage are they able to deal? And Raptors after the buff actually compare quite favorably. A squad of 6 Raptors, obviously that would cost 6 gold, deals 553.8 DPS without any talents, just smacking away. But of course there's also Angry Chickens who were also buffed. I don't know why they were buffed, they were already really strong. A squad of 9 Sea Chickens, it's going to deal 450 DPS. Yep, no talents, just going in and blasting away. Harpies, even without the poison talent, 349.8 DPS, Dire Batlings 240 DPS. Necromancer is actually pretty good at dealing single target damage. If Necromancer's minions also connect, that's 211.9 DPS. And Whelpegs, everyone's favorite of course, 183.3 DPS. Also minis like Mountaineer and Footman make an appearance in this list, as well as Grommash and General Drakizat. But of course this is just a comparison between minis of different costs and different ranges and stuff, so no talents, there's still a lot more that we can really get into. First of all, we can take a look at DPS per gold spent. This is still talentless and still the damage that you deal from the very first second. And now Angry Chickens, the highest DPS per gold spent, 225 DPS per gold. And coming in at number 2 is maybe a surprise name, because Vultures got a big buff, and Vultures per gold spent are now the second best DPS mini in the game. 131.4 DPS per gold. Yep, those vultures, they're really coming for you. Dire Batlings, Harpies, Raptors still good even on a per gold spent basis. Griffin Rider becomes stronger. Griffin Rider is actually pretty good. It's cheap and it deals a lot of damage. So around half of the list is new, and many of those new minis are cheap minis. We have like Bat Rider. Bat Rider also surprisingly much damage for a 2 gold mini. Prowler is pretty good at damage dealing. Witch Doctor is surprisingly good because it only costs 2. Fairy Dragon, after all the buffs, it's actually also one of the better damage dealers per gold spent on a single target. But if we want to unleash the full power of minis, we want to add in talents, and then we also want to add in the effects of like Fury and Poison, and for that we need to start to simulate some longer fights. So for example, single target DPS over 10 seconds, who wins? Well, Raptors with strength in numbers. If you get 6 Raptors out there, strength in numbers talent, they are going to melt targets, 830.7 DPS. Angry Chickens with Furious Foul, so they get Fury, so they start picking even faster, 765 DPS over 10 seconds. Harpies with their infectious swipes, still very good. Spiderlings, the new buffed Spiderlings, give them the Envenom talent, so they have double poison, and even over just 10 seconds, they're already approaching 450 DPS. General Drakizat against non-resistant targets is actually pretty strong over 10 seconds. Against non-resistant targets, because Drakizat has this aura that adds 50% elemental damage taken, but that aura actually does not affect resistant targets at all. So not only do resistant targets take half damage because of their resistance against elemental damage, but they also don't take the aura damage at all. So yeah, Drakizat is just really bad against resistant targets. Griffin Rider with Odin's Fury. If you use the Fury talent, I know PvP people use the range talent because that wins 1 versus 1, so you get to hit first and usually a couple of hits and the fight is over. But for sustained damage, Odin's Fury, my favorite PvE talent for Griffin Rider, it just deals so much damage. Dire Batlings, Necromancers, Wars and Grunts with their Fury ability also start to move ahead of Footman over a period of time. And we have stuff like Chimera also in here. At 20 seconds, we can see that spiderlings keep catching up, but here we also see something curious, because poison is going to cap out. Poison caps at 99 stacks, and a squad of spiderlings with envenom, they are going to apply 99 stacks in around 10 seconds. So the other 10 seconds, they're just going to keep going at 792 DPS plus their meager damage. So a little bit over 800 DPS, but they can't quite catch up fast enough, because they just can't get any more poison stacks on the target. But still, they're doing a great job. Also, we can see minis like Chimera and Plague Farmer climbing the ranks. But that was just raw damage. What if we take into account the gold that we spent to deal that damage? And in a 10-second fight, taking into account the gold we spent, angry chickens with furious fowl they are just phenomenal. And the second best damage dealer in a 10-second fight, already in a 10-second fight, if we take into account the gold spent, is spiderlings with envenom, 224.4 DPS. Then we have harpies. Raptors are still doing strong, even when taking into account the gold spent. Vultures, really powerful. Griffin Rider, Die Battlings, Plague Farmer just rising up the ranks. And in a 10-second fight, taking into account the gold spent, things like Bat Rider, Prowler, Witch Doctor, still quite competitive. For a 20-second fight per gold spent, angry chickens are still in the lead, followed by spiderlings. If the fight would have an infinite length, then spiderlings would eventually beat angry chickens, because their DPS is higher at this point, but because it took them a while to ramp up, then they haven't caught up yet at this point. So that was a lot of ordered lists, but what kind of insights can we draw from those? Well, first of all, quite obvious insight is that poison damage really ramps up. The longer the fight, the better poison becomes. Also, squad minis tend to deal a lot of damage. Angry chickens, and even things like Warzone grunts and footmen, although compared to their cost they don't really keep up that well, but for tanks they actually deal a whole ton of damage. Also, buffs have had a much bigger effect than you would initially assume, like things like angry chickens and raptors and vultures. They're all just so much more of a threat. Like, obviously we're used to completing all the puzzles with the old stuff and it works, so why do we need new stuff? But if we were to start from scratch, then I think stuff like raptors and vultures could see a lot more play. And also, some AoE minis are just stunning. They're just phenomenal, because this has been single target DPS, and obviously AoE, if there's a lot of targets and you have an area of effect damage, then yeah, that mini is going to deal a whole lot more damage than any single target mini can deal. And there's AoE minis that are competitive in single target damage, especially Plague Farmer, Chimera, Whelpegs, to an extent even the Bat Rider, especially when considering the gold spent. So some of these AoE minis, they're just incredibly strong. And you can really see how Plague Farmer, after it has been buffed time and time again, it's now at the position where it is indeed one of the best minis in the entire game. So that was a brief look into the DPS aspect of Warcraft Rumble, and some surprising minis maybe at the top of the charts. Thank you for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and a special thanks to all of my Patreon supporters, YouTube members and Twitch subscribers who make all of these videos possible.